Jaz sem Ivan Mišev od advokatskog društva Pavlski Mišev, advokatsko društvo povezano s PwC. I danas imamo tema koja što nije toliko direktno povezana s pazarом na kapitalno, indirektno sekako. I tema koja što je značajna, a zašto je značajna, najmnogo proizlegува може би od ova slika, od ovaj slajd, što pokažu globalna podatak za семейните бизнеси, а тоа е дека од 100 семейни бизнеси успешно изградени во првата генерација, во втората генерација стануваат само 60, во третата генерација веќе само 32, во четвртата генерација само 16, што значи дека се случува сериозен предизвик на семейните компании да одржат еден мултигенерацијски континуитет. Ќе преминам на англиски. I am very happy to welcome with me my colleague from PwC Poland, Evelina Grzelak. Believe it or not, she and her team are specialized in working specifically with families who own successful businesses, to talk to them, to help them set up a proper succession plan so that these companies will ensure multi-generational sustainability and growth. But Evelina, probably this is easier said than done, because we know from experience there are complex situations, families means emotions, not just business, means first generation founder, but several children, favorite children, children that are involved in the business, children that are not involved in the business, maybe two marriages, children from so complex situations. So Evelina, if we see the title of the panel today, the literal translation is in Macedonian is inheritance in family businesses, but I assume succession is a more complex theme. It's not just, okay, let's decide what the children who gets to inherit how many shares and who will be the new CEO, but I assume a lot more topics are involved.
Yes, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I believe that this sort of meetings are always the best way to share experiences and find inspiration. And also, I'm in Macedonia for 2 days now, and I found out that Ohrid is the best place to get to know Macedonia, so I'm very happy to be here. And thank you for having me. To answer Ivan's question, I will start with saying what, in my opinion, distinguishes family businesses from other businesses, and I think it's mainly the mixture of business world and family world. So the dynamics of changes in the business and the complexity of family relationships are like two sides of one coin. They mean that the family within the family business can be the key strength of the family business, but also if things are not looked after properly and with care, the family within the family business can become the key risk or the key weakness. And in my opinion, assuring business continuity in family business and succession planning is mainly about this. It's not only about thinking of how to pass the business to the next generation, but how to make sure that the family will remain the key strength of the family business for generations. When we work with family businesses in Poland, we focus on 6 key areas, which also include the family world and the business world, and put it somehow together. First of all, something we call membership. So, in fact, who should be in the group who will be shaping the business for future. And this often seems to be very easy answer. Well, the founders and their successors, their kids. But things get sometimes more complicated because the family grows. Some people are involved in the business, some people are not. They are just members of the family, and they may become the passive owner in the future. So how do you divide the business, how do you put together a structure in order to look at the expectations of all the family members and also remember about the business needs. Do you only focus on the family structure, so the father has 3 kids, for example, and divided by 3? Or do you also think about who is involved in the business, who brings the biggest value? There are also many external managers who become very crucial to the future of the business. So this is often quite a difficult and complicated question on who should actually be shaping the business for the future, and also how to put this whole structure together. The second area which we focus on is vision and value. So I would say the glue that keeps everybody together within the business. If there is no vision and no shared values, usually people make business for money. And I don't know if money is enough to keep people together for generations if the crisis comes. I can give you an example from a long-lasting business in Germany, and I can share it because it's public knowledge. It's a company called Prim Holding, which was founded in the 16th century. They are in their 15th and 16th generation currently. And in the 15th generation, we're like a consortium of cousins. There are plenty of owners currently, and they vote and pick up the managers, the managing cousins. In the 15th generation, one of the cousins went into illegal agreement on pricing with competitors, and the European Union fined the business with a huge amount of money, and the company couldn't afford to pay it. So all the cousins put at stake their own assets, their private wealth, to save the company. So imagine what the company meant for them if after 15 generations, people who were not involved in the business on a daily basis decided to put their own money at stake and save this company. They paid their time, they carry on the business, and they're very successful again. We're in the 16th generation currently. Without vision and shared values and making sure that all the next generations are involved and connected to the business, I don't think it will happen. The third area which we focus on is something we call owner's business model, and this is the question on how to structure the business in order to first make sure the vision will happen, but also in order to make the business applicable for the rising amount of stakeholders. It's usually quite easy in the first generation. There's one founder, sometimes there are a few founders, but then once the next generations come in, you have a lot of people at the table, and you have to think about how to structure the business so that it still works quite well. I can give you an example, an anonymous example from a Polish company we've been working with. The founders had 3 children, and they had the family group, which had 3 branches, and each branch was managed by one of the children. Each of them was quite successful and profitable, but each of them needed further investment. So they were keeping on arguing about which branch should get the money. Especially the kids were also getting their annual bonus for the results of the branch they were actually managing. So what happened there, when we started working with them, we encouraged them to first of all work together on the strategy for the whole group, and this made realize everybody where is the biggest potential and where we as a whole family will get the biggest return on investment. So this changed the dynamics of the discussions. And the second thing was the change of the remuneration system. Yeah? If I am awarded for my branch, I want the investment to go into my branch. They changed it the way that it was to some extent dependent on the results of the branch and to some extent dependent on the results of the whole group. So everybody was interested in the success of the whole group as well. This is just one of the examples, but the business model, the structure that will be applicable for the rising amount of stakeholders is a very important thing as well. The fourth area is the corporate governance, and it usually focuses in the family business on decision making. So how do we make decisions with, again, the rising number of people at the table? I would assume you would agree with me that this is one of the key advantages of family businesses, that they can make decisions very quickly. So how to do it, not to lose it, but also to include next generations in the decision-making process. Usually when we work with family businesses, we help them with mapping the areas of decisions which can be made individually, because somebody manages the department, manages the branch, whatever, and there are some areas where the decisions can be made individually, and the family usually agrees that there's a certain list of decisions that has to be made together, or there are some decisions which, for example, can be made only by the funder. It's usually hard to imagine how such a list would look like, because you think, well, family businesses makes hundreds of decisions every day, but you can divide it into the kinds of decisions, like the investment decisions above X, like decisions that concern the crucial employees, etc., etc. And it's quite easy to implement, in fact, and it changes a lot. The fifth area is something that's actually quite typical only for family businesses, so family governance, not corporate governance, but family governance. It's about the family within the family business, how do they communicate, how do they make decisions, how do they cooperate. Again, it seems quite simple, but in reality, sometimes it is a challenge, because there can be a big number of people. Some of them are in the business on a daily basis, working next to each other. Some of them living abroad, but are passive owners. They want to get the decision. They want to be involved in decisions. They want to get some crucial information about the business. So very often our clients, for example, decide to organize the regular, what they call family councils. And this is like a family gathering where everybody meets, sometimes online, if the family is spread around the country or around Europe or anywhere else, where the family members share the crucial information about the business, where they share ideas, where they make decisions together, where they give opinions. This is very often also a good starting point for successors before they join management board or supervisory board. It's a good place for them to work with the funders, just to understand how to approach these strategic decisions and to learn more about business. And last but not least, it's something usually everybody wants to start with, and we usually say let's keep it for the end, is our roles. And it's again not only about choosing who will be the next CEO, it's rather about thinking what our business needs, what our business will need in the future. So what sort of candidates do we want in management roles in the future? What we as owners family expect from people that will manage our business in the future. This is very important because sometimes you get families where there are, for example, 4 kids. I was telling Ivan that we are very lucky about families with 4 kids. The majority of our clients have 4 kids. I don't know why. And there's a big age difference between them. And everybody thinks it's very natural that, for example, the eldest brother will take over the role of the CEO. This is quite frustrating for the young ones, which are in their 20s, for example, at the time. And very often they just would say, okay, I am not going to work in that company, I will become an artist, I will become a sportsman, whatever, yeah? Something to distinguish myself from my siblings. If we agree what is actually needed in the business and what candidates do we want in our business in the future, the young ones also know what is expected and how should they develop if they want to take over important roles in the business in the future as well. This also helps not to fight over over positions in the business, because everything is cleared and everything is agreed. What I think is most important, apart from the 6 areas, is to start conversations as soon as possible. Start of conversations about business continuity doesn't mean that the founder will go in a year's time when we finish the conversations. No, it's usually the start of changes within the business, of the development of the successors and so on. So I think the sooner the better. Also, when the discussion takes place, they're often very difficult. They take time, they're very emotional, this is natural. But once the family agrees the plan for future, it's really worth writing it down, for example, in the form of a family constitution or family agreement, and everybody to sign it down, and usually taking part in this process and then celebrating, signing down our common plan for the future of our business means everybody feels morally obliged to adhere to it. And third, and I think this is probably one of the most important things, we always when we work with our clients on a succession plan, the very important part is the implementation plan, because every plan will just remain a plan if there is no implementation. So we always also prepare all the steps that need to be taken in order for this plan to happen. And this also obviously includes all the legal safeguards, because it's great when the family agrees and that there's family governance within the business, but the legal safeguard needs to be there as well.
So, Evelina, we talk 15th and 16th generation companies yet, but we are either, but we are getting into second and even third generation of successful companies. So if we understood well, it doesn't mean that, okay, we start discussing within our family the succession planning because it's time for the first generation founder to leave, but actually this process should start earlier, when the first generation founder is still active in the company, and it is when the children should actually get involved in the business.
Yes, definitely. It's very often a challenge when we work with Polish family businesses. As you probably know, we're also in our first wave of succession. The majority of Polish businesses started in the 80s and 90s, so we probably started around 10 years ago when the succession actually started to take place. And many of the business founders usually say, well, we're not ready yet, my children are not ready yet, I have this huge investment which I work on, and when I finalize it, then I think about succession plan and so on and so on. I can't blame them, because it's usually a very difficult process to go through. And also many founders think that starting these conversations will mean the end of my business era will come very soon. I think this kind of approach has a number of risks. First of all, if the founder will not make some space for the successors to join, to make decisions together, to run some parts of the business together, where should they learn on how to make strategic decisions, on how to manage people, and so on. Secondly, if it lasts too long, the successors can get frustrated. There can be a burnout. It's not necessarily that the second generation wants the first generation to go. It's not about it. It's about having an agreement, having a plan, knowing what will going to happen. As I said, very often, these plans include agreements, expectations towards the second generation that will really take months or years to fulfill. Yeah? Sometimes they need to develop various skills, gain some experience, and so on. But it's good to start these conversations just for everybody to know that we want to get you involved in this discussion, that we want to shape this future together. It is one of the main challenges to realize that the company life cycle and the founder life cycle needs to separate at one point. in order for the business to survive. And the business has to be independent someday, and it will not happen without prepared successors, basically. When we look at Polish companies, we see that very often the founder can't find his, I would say, oxygen, his or her oxygen afterwards. Yeah? So it's very often difficult to find something I will be doing afterwards. These are people who are working the whole life, 20 hours per day probably. When I see examples where it went quite well, so the founders let the next generation actually manage the business, and we're just there to share experience, to take part in the most strategic decisions, because obviously this is a very important part. Yeah? The founders have huge experience, and there's no point in not using it for the sake of the company. It's just about making space for the next generation. The founders who actually manage to do it are the ones that will find something else for them to do. We have clients who, for example, were scientists before we started the business, and they went back to the university. They are lecturers. They are leading the research and development departments in the business, and they are in the supervisory board. We have clients who develop another businesses that cooperate with the main family business, yeah? Like photovoltaic farms, which supply the energy to the main business, and so on. So it's important to think not only about the next generation, but also about myself, if I'm a founder. How will I make sure that I will have things to do, so I'm not thinking every day, well, maybe I'll pop into the company and see how it's going, yeah?
It's clear that if in ideal scenario the succession planning process starts on time, the founder is still here, still very active, and usually the founders tend to be authoritative. They're the ones that are hitting on the table and telling what is going to be. So this could work in succession planning. The founder deciding how everything is going to be arranged, or maybe this process needs to go through communication and consensus and building understanding between the family members.
This process has to go through communication, consensus, compromises, and talking a lot. It is normal, it is obvious that the first generation, second generation see things differently, and I think it's absolutely normal, and you don't need to have a family business to realize it. You just go home and talk to your kids. But what's important in the family business is, first of all, to talk and listen to each other, because probably very often both generations are right to some extent, and it's about looking for something in between. But I think that's the most important thing in the succession planning, and then also in implementing it, is letting the next generation doing their things their way. Obviously, to some extent, you have to make sure that the business is safe, but just to let the next generation to be themselves, to be authentic leaders in their way. Because if they will try to become the copy of the parents, this will not gonna work, because they are not their parents. They are themselves, and I strongly believe that only being authentic works when you are a leader of a business. So that's definitely one thing, and I think that communication is also a very crucial thing, because if we look at parents and children, there's usually a model of communication that was used for all their lives, and it's a different thing when you are a parent and a kid, and it's a different thing when you are partners who are supposed to do business together. Yeah? So the style of communication has got to change. You have to accept that it's peer-to-peer. It's not a kid and the parent anymore, if you talk about business of this. Yeah? And that's the other thing that is very difficult in family businesses, that I always say that you wear different hats when you are in a business, family business. Yeah? You are a kid and a parent, you are a manager and an employee, very difficult to distinguish when are we a family and when are we at work and we're talking about business. Some of our clients even use different names, like they would say mom or dad when they talk about family stuff, and Mrs. or Mr. President when they want to talk about business. We also have clients who agreed that there are several family meetings where we don't talk about business. Yeah. Obviously, it's very difficult because if there's something going on in the business, you have to talk about it. That's obvious. But I think the most important thing is to remember for everybody to be involved. One more example from a Polish family business. We had a client, an owner and 3 kids, and the founder was living next door to one of the kids, and 2 of them were living somewhere else. So the founder was often meeting one of the sons for dinner, for watching sports together and so on, and they were talking about business as well. So sometimes we're going to the company the next day, and they would say to the remaining 2 siblings, well, we actually only met last night and we made this decision, so we will do this, this and that. So you can imagine how the rest felt then. So it's about agreeing how, when we make decisions, how we communicate, and about remembering that if we work together, we're partners in a business, we're not a kid and a partner anymore. If you want your kids to develop and if you want them to become a leader in the future.
One more short question and we're done. If I was someone from the financial system, from the banks lending money to family businesses or maybe investor, and if I would see these numbers, it might be scary, also relevant, you know, giving money to a company, looking the balance sheets, everything looks great, and the company then falls apart just because of family dynamics. So I assume that also for the financial sector, this is important, whether a family business has a good succession plan in place. Is this something relevant in Poland? Do you see banks?
Absolutely. I will start from Germany, which obviously has longer history of entrepreneurship and our neighbors. So I will just mention that I know in Germany, many financial institutions, before they give you capital, they require the succession plan in place because it's something that makes a business safe future. In Poland, many financial institutions, maybe it's not a requirement yet, but they actually often are like a business partners for family businesses, and they are very often the ones who would start talking to the founder about planning the future. Again, not about passing the business to the next generation straight away, but about making a plan on how to assure the business continuity, on how to involve the next generation, how to make sure that the next generation is prepared for what's to come. So, yes, definitely. And looking from the financial institution perspective, well, I think it's obvious that every financial institution wants to make sure that the family business they work with will be safe.
It's a real risk factor. So just one more comment from me. Maybe also at one point the stock exchange would be a good tool, because going public means getting outside investors, professional management, transparency. So yeah, but certainly in a serious economy, this is something that should be considered seriously, because family business is falling apart because of not having good succession planning. Means losing jobs, losing value, means losing money, and this is certainly important. Evelina, thank you very much.
I can
Sure,
just one more comment. It is also very important not only for financial institutions, but for every stakeholders, business partners, employees. We had a client where the founder was nearly 80, where they decided to make a succession plan and they started making changes. He was in great shape, he is in great shape, he's not after 80. But his kids were around 50, and there was a moment where the employees started being worried, honestly speaking. And they did the plan, they did really good job, the founder is still in the business and still has plenty of energy, still is in the supervisory board, but the kids actually took over brand management together with external managers. And they decided to do like big celebration when they're signing their family constitution. And we were talking to some of the employees they invited, and they said that they actually feel relieved that the family decided to do it, because they were not sure what would happen with